Hey fellow Trek Chatters, I'm Pit Trekkie and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. So it's been a little while since my last video. It's been about, 5-6 months. Well, a lot of the reason for that is health issues. Back in October, right after I did my last episode, I found out my blood pressure had spiked to 192 over 146, which could have killed me. And so I had to go in the emergency room and get put on medication for it, all that fun stuff. But I had to scale back some of my workload with being, running a private practice and having this show and then doing a podcast and then doing the Stella Parada, my Star Trek chapter. I just had too many things on my plate, so I needed to take a little downtime. But now I'm back and I'm really looking forward to talking about Star Trek with all of you again. So what I really want to talk about today is really the last couple of months, since January 15th of this year, 2026, about Star Trek, what has happened and where we're at now and where we're going forward. So on January 15th, the newest Star Trek series, Star Trek Starfleet Academy, premiered on Paramount Plus. And let's just say it's had a lot of mixed reviews. Critics gave it a really good high rating. Fans, not so much. There is definitely a loyal group of fans out there that really enjoy the show and have tried to keep it going, but it hasn't been enough. And so Star Trek Starfleet Academy was pretty much canceled right after the end of the first season. Now, we know there's a second season that's already been filmed, is currently in post-production. The question is, are they going to release it on Paramount Plus in the next year, or are they going to release it on to just straight to DVD Blu-ray, or are they just going to scrap it altogether? So a lot of rumors going on at this point. And also the next question that's going on is where do we go with Star Trek at this point? And there is fan petition right now to try to get a third season going, but I don't think that's going to happen, considering there are pictures all over the internet right now that have been posted on official sources that the set has been destroyed. So it looks like Starfleet Academy is going to be out of session. Whether you like that or not, it's the end of Star Trek, and for the fact that it's the 60th anniversary of Star Trek this year, that's kind of a real blow to the festivities for this year. So I really want to talk a little bit about my thoughts on Starfleet Academy. Not anything major, deep delve into anything, just some basic stuff, what I thought about the show, why I don't fit, what worked, what didn't work, and what I feel about how it's going to fit into the Star Trek legacy overall. So we had 10 episodes of this show, and obviously it was promoted to reach a certain demographic. This was definitely to bring in a younger, refreshed Star Trek fan base, probably around 18 to 24 at this point. I wouldn't say anything like 18 to 34. I think this was more for a much younger demographic so that they could try to get new Star Trek fans, because let's be honest, us older fans were either middle-aged or older, and eventually we're not going to be here. We can't sustain it, so they're going to need new fans to sustain Star Trek going forward. I don't think this is the way to do it. I don't think this show fired on all cylinders the way it should have, and I'm going to give a few reasons why. So really what I didn't like about the show, first thing that I didn't really like about the show was the extreme silliness in a lot of the writing. A lot of goofy parts that were in the episodes, like, for example, in the episode where, and I don't remember all the names of the episodes offhand, but first of all, the Darren Raimi character, the fact that he was glitter vomiting because he couldn't digest some sort of enzyme in bananas or whatever. I mean, I'm glad they didn't show actual puke in the episodes. They've shown a lot of puke in a lot of the newer Star Trek episodes. I think this was just an attempt at some silly amount of humor, and it just was stupid. I mean, Star Trek's always been scientifically based to the best of its ability, and is there any life form anywhere that would glitter vomit at this point? I mean, wouldn't it make sense that he would actually spit up and throw up bodily fluids like anybody else? I just thought that this was kind of goofy, and it fell very, very flat. It wasn't hysterical. So just a lot of stupid stuff like that. You know, at the beginning of the episode, series acclamation mill where Sam was talking about her life, and they opened it up with little stick figures, and it doesn't come off as intelligent for a Star Trek show. As a matter of fact, a lot of the silly, goofy humor that was going on kind of sounded like a lot of the Police Academy shtick that was going on in those movies. And that's where it fit. I love the Police Academy movies. I love a good slapsticky sense of humor. You know, I love the Three Stooges. I grew up on them. It just doesn't fit in Star Trek. So, it just, those kind of little things I really didn't enjoy. The Nala Ake walking around in her bare feet, laying around on people's couches and in the captain's chair. I thought it was, you know, for fun, laughing situations, trying to make them all, these characters are so cool and so unique. And it just, again, to me, it fell flat. It just showed like they weren't respecting what Star Trek is supposed to be about. And there is a certain intelligence and a certain amount of grace that goes on in Star Trek episodes. You know, another area that I thought was really ridiculous and where I thought they were pandering to this young demographic were just some of the character behaviors. They had this one character running around that apparently they literally wrote this into the show, these writers, that this girl swallowed her comm badge. And the doctor who came back from Voyager actually was saying in the episode, already, like it had already happened before with other cadets, whether at that moment or with other Starfleet officers at some point. In the 32nd century, is that really what Star Trek or Starfleet officers have become? Goofy and simpletons? I mean, who would even put a comm badge in their mouth for them to swallow it? I mean, it was probably written as some sort of funny throwaway line, but it really defined a lot of the writing for the show. Something that stupid. The one that I really love. So in the one episode where the Doctor and Nala, they were Jet Reno, they were having dinner with the War College Chancellor, and he was having difficulties with how he wanted to approach talking to a dignitary or somebody who was coming. And they were practicing the dinner at the table, and they're yelling with like little megaphones. And at one point, this puffer fish that they were eating kind of deflated and make a fart noise. And then the Doctor's going ha 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 ha, along with Jet Reno. I mean, that was painstaking. That was painful to watch, because the first thing I thought was, first of all, Robert Picardo was phoning that in as best as he could. It was like he was forcing himself to think that was funny. And the second thing I thought was, this was a guy who was in Voyager for many years, had really many different scenes where he was working with 7 and 9 to help her overcome her humanity. Compare that moment to the way he was with her in Someone to Watch Over Me. And if you don't know, that's a 5th season episode of Voyager. Just the lack of scale of quality that the writing has become. Another episode, in the pilot episode, you know, they had the bridge crew of the Athena, and obviously the ship gets severely damaged by the Venari Rawl. These are, I guess, the big baddies of season 1, in addition to Noose Braca, who is their leader. I'll get to him in a little bit. But it literally, at the end of the episode, they manage to, or Braca gets away on an escape pod. The rest of the crew is being back to their ship. Instead of arresting the crew, you know, because Starfleet officers are supposed to value life, they end up destroying the ship. And then this moron right here goes, talk about a teachable moment. Duh. Are you serious? Starfleet officers value life, even if they're criminals. Look in the 4th season episode of The Next Generation, Galaxy's Child, when the Enterprise is attacked by that space being, and they end up accidentally killing it with their phasers, and Picard just laments about Starfleet and the Federation, how they value life and support life, and they're not there to take it. And then they ended up saving the baby. They brought every resource they could to save the baby from the mother. Okay? In this episode, they destroy it, and they think it's a teachable moment for the kids, for the students. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's something that flies in the face of Star Trek. That's something Section 31 would do at this point, not Starfleet officers. It's just absolutely ridiculous that they would do that. Other thing with the writing, the USS Athena, first of all, I really like the ship. I like the concept of it. I like the design. It's something unique, something different that we haven't seen in Star Trek before. I've never been a big fan of the 32nd century engines going, nacelles going off the ship. But I mean, it is the 32nd century. We kind of have to understand that there are going to be different types of reasons for these ships, and whether we understand them or not. But I never minded the design of the ship, and I liked the sets. I thought the sets on the inside were wonderful. The bridge just felt like any Kurtzman era bridge to me. To me, it just looks like a 23rd century bridge, just like Discovery and just like the Abomination Prize that I call it from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. They look exactly the same. The technology never changes. You know, that was always part of the fun of watching Star Trek, of seeing the different technology and the different periods the shows took place in. Not now. Now it's all the same, and canon doesn't matter anyway, so why not? You know, but I was never a big... The bridge, it was okay. It wasn't a big deal. I love the atrium area where they had the memory wall, and it's just like, you know, where everybody kind of came together. I really enjoyed that. So I thought it was a really nice set. I also loved that the Athena could actually separate from its nacelles and actually dock on Earth, and it was the school. I think that was a really great idea. The problem with the Athena being the school itself is they took that ship and all the cadets to different areas in space, you know, and possibly put them and the whole Academy in danger. If the ship would have ended up being destroyed, there would have been no Starfleet Academy left, pretty much. You know, so it didn't make sense to take these, and these were supposed to be, this was supposed to be the first Starfleet Academy cadet class in, what, a century because of the burn? So the whole school was made up of freshmen. They couldn't have had anybody older because there was no academy. What really caught me was the fact in a later episode, the one with Tilly, where she showed up, she came from another planet or whatever because she was working with third-year cadets. How were there third-year cadets in Starfleet Academy if Starfleet Academy just got reinstated? Hello? Like, where's the continuity police in this show? That was another problem with this show. There was a lack of continuity and things that didn't make sense with a lot of the characters. Let's take into consideration, let's say Darren Ramey and Jay Den, Cragg, okay? So they started out in episode 1 where Jay Den was trying to be friendly, but Darren Ramey was off as being the bully. 3 episodes in, later, during the episode where Jay Den was kind of fighting about, hearing about his family possibly being dead. And he was really worried about these panic attacks that he was getting from speeches that he was making in the episode. And out of nowhere, Darren Ramey comes in and holds him very, very intimately and does these intimate breathing exercises. Like they're interested in each other. It just didn't make sense. Like in 3 episodes, he went from hating him to like wanting to bang him. Very, very interesting. I just thought that was very odd. Now, I tried to be understanding of the characters and the fact that they had to come together very, very quickly and bond very, very quickly. Because this was only 10 episodes for the season, so they couldn't really bond in 26 episodes. So it all had to be rushed. And so that makes a little bit of sense. Speaking of the characters and that writing, well, let's talk a little bit about New Spraka. I brought him up a little bit ago. What a horrible character that character was as a villain. He made absolutely no sense whatever. Okay, so half Klingon, half Tellarite. What do they call himself? A Klingerite or something like that? Okay. Didn't necessarily look very much like a Klingon-Tellarite hybrid, but I mean, that's beside the point. He was who he was. But the character was goofy. Never seemed to act like he was intelligent in any way. I mean, he was good at manipulating people, I will say that, in the episodes. But the fact that he was running around using 21st century slang, and he had a tic-tac-toe board, again, a 20th century, maybe even earlier human game, and this character wasn't human in any way, shape, or form, completely unbelievable in any way, shape, or form. And then he's putting the whole Federation on trial for the destruction in his colony, but it turned out all along that it was his dad who made a mistake firing on the planet, and that's what caused the colony to be destroyed. Just such a weak character, in my opinion. I didn't find him interesting at all. The only thing that was interesting about him was the fact that Paul Giamatti was able to play the character well. based off the writing that he had. I thought the character made no sense. Then you've got this moron here, Caleb Mears' mom, who ran around and for some reason, I guess they didn't have replicators in the 32nd century, but I guess she was trying to steal food for her and Caleb, so she joined Noose Braca and the Venari Raw. She's complicit in a mission where she causes the death of a Starfleet officer. She gets arrested, okay? Later on down the line in the season finale, she's in a courtroom trying Nala Ake along with Noose Braca. And she's acting like she was the victim in the whole thing. You took me away from my child. And the whole episode was written to make it that she was a victim. They were trying to make her be the victim because she was her son was removed from her. Bitch, let me tell you something. You were part of a criminal mission that led to the death of a Starfleet officer. You were a criminal. You should have had your child taken from you. But instead it was supposed to be some moral lesson about why it's not good to separate kids from their parents. Well, if she's a criminal, maybe she needed to be separated from her son. I'm sorry, I didn't feel any bleeding heart for her whatsoever. And I thought it was a really stupid message for Star Trek to put out there. That, you know what, you can do whatever you want, just don't take me away from my kid. I can be a criminal, I can do violent things, but you better let me stay with my kid and don't arrest me. Dumb, dumb, dumb writing. And then they had the Chancellor, Nala Ake, spend the whole season feeling guilty that she split up this mother and child to the point that she ended her own Starfleet career. You're telling me in that position of judge advocate or whatever she was doing, she didn't have to do that plenty of other times? But this one completely changed her life. And she quit her career and everything. Then she goes on to Bajor and is working on this in this child facility or whatever, which I thought was very interesting that they were on Bajor and showed no Bajoran children. Hello! There were two characters, one was green, one was orange, that she was talking to on Bajor. Where were the Bajorans? Not one Bajoran in that scene on Bajor. It makes no frickin' sense whatsoever. It's just some of the writing was just ridiculous. And just nonsensical. Then you have Sam at one point, you know, I believe it was episode 3. It was during that episode with the War College, where the Academy and the War College were battling back and forth. And then what ends up happening is that they pull a prank on the Academy people and they beam them everywhere naked or whatever. And you have Sam beaming into this water and she's blowing air out of her. Where is she getting the air from? I mean, that doesn't make sense. She's a hologram. She shouldn't have any air coming out of her. And why does she need to be in the shower room with the characters when she doesn't shower? Makes no logical sense to me, but hey, you know, a lot of the writing in this show didn't make any logical sense. I really feel, and let me have a drink here, I really feel that the writers nowadays, not just in Star Trek, but just in general, really believe that this generation is stupid. Star Trek was always popular with people, even in the 60s when it was on. It had its niche group of people that it was very popular with. You know why it became very popular with the younger crowd? Because it was intelligent. It talked to the audience. That's why young high schoolers and college kids were drawn to the show. That's why fans in the 70s, 80s, 90s became astronauts or scientists or engineers or doctors, whatever, because they were motivated by what was being shown on screen. Then you go on here and you have these writers writing like they're from Buffy, and I know a lot of other people have said that, but it's true. It literally was like Star Trek 90210. Heck, it was advertised as like a Star Trek 90210. I mean, who can forget this poster that they actually showed for promo? Okay, it wasn't a horrible poster, but I mean, it was meant to think in that regard. So they think that the audience at this point it does stupid stuff, and all they do is party, and you know that the Academy was going to be full of hijinks and practical jokes. Was it going to be to some degree? Yes. But I think it just went a little too overboard with that, especially the whole episode with the Academy and the War College. I mean, seeing them acting like that to some degree, I just thought was a little overboard. I mean, I think it could have reined it in a little bit. I mean, in Star Trek, they did have, You know, they had Finnegan in the original series, who was Kirk's adversary at the Academy. Sisko had that Vulcan that he played baseball against. They were rivals in the Academy wrestling. You know, I mean, so I mean, there are goofy things that have happened. I just think they really took it overly far in this series. And then my absolute favorite with the writing, the 21st century slang being used in the 32nd century. What is that, 1100 years in the future? And they're still talking like 21st century people. Of course they were doing that to bring in the 18 to 24 people. But again, instead of trying to come up with well-intentioned, educated material for them, these are some of the funny things that they had their characters saying. I'm Keonian, bitch. Dumpster fire. My boo, my bestie. Splooge it all over the place. Dudes, judgy as hell. I can make myself permeable, bitches. Eat glass, bro. Ball clenching, sphincter puckering pain. Batshit cannibal. Wimp-ass bird boy. Yeah, dick, it's a thing. This one's an asshole. Morning wood. Underwater hookups. Don't be a dick. Nailed it! You want to date your show, go ahead and do that. I mean, yes, the original series got dated because it had, you know, mini skirts and go-go boots and stuff like that. They did, and that does date the show to some degree, okay? But at least they had decent writing and decent episodes for the most part. You could kind of look past a lot of that. This is stupid. Oh, and my favorite of the lines came from Caleb Meir himself. I'm a master debater. Real funny, real cool. You know, that's what you want your Star Trek to actually be remembered as, compared to all the other shows that had a lot more thought-provoking stuff. I mean, not every single show was thought-provoking and wonderful. I mean, let's face it, Spock's brain, Prophet and Lace, things like that. I mean, they had their goofiness too, you know, but I mean, that's going to date the show, and it just makes it sound like they think that the people who watch the show are morons. Like, people saying that kind of stuff, I would think that aren't very educated in, like, American civics, things like that, and don't know what's going on around them, but they know everything about Taylor Swift. That's what they're trying to reach. Alright? Now, in terms of the characters, I actually did not mind the characters per se. So let's start with Caleb Meir. I thought he was a pretty strong character and could have been developing into a pretty strong leader. He went from being this criminal who didn't have any family, didn't have any friends, he was out for himself, and he was able to be given this chance to join Starfleet to find his mom. In the process, he actually realized he wanted to become a good leader, and he became very attached to his friends, to the point that his friends actually tried to help him find his mother, which to me was the moment where that was the Star Trek 3 moment, where all the friends, as many of them as they could, came together and risked their time at the Academy, possibly being expelled, by stealing a shuttle and going and helping Caleb to find his mom. That was the Star Trek 3 moment there, and I really did like that. What I thought was really kind of ridiculous about Caleb is that the way he instantly changed from criminal to, yes ma'am, I'm going to listen, at least for the most part. There were a couple moments he didn't always listen to the rules. But as soon as Laura Thok, the Klingon Jem'Hadar female, put Craig's bag on his back and made him do push-ups and yelled and screamed at him, all of a sudden he went from being, you know, some bad boy with a criminal record to, yes ma'am, I'm going to listen to you. Bullshit. I've worked 22 years in the mental health field, and most of them have been with children with oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, okay? One time you're going to have a drill sergeant put a bag on his back and all of a sudden he's going to listen? Not happening. Not realistic. I think they should have played that out a little bit more, and we should have watched him becoming more disciplined rather than almost becoming completely disciplined in that moment. Again, he had other moments in the episode, but that I just thought didn't work. Okay? I also think that he had a really good relationship with the Betazoid girl. What was her name? Tama Sadal or something to that effect. I couldn't stand the names of these characters. The characters actually felt like they were just like named like fan service, like fans would come up with, that were just kind of like, they thought it sounded Bajoran or it sounded Betazoid or this or that. Like those were they sounded like the kind of characters I used to come up with in my little games I used to do when I was a kid and a teenager. Just very generic names, and I couldn't remember all their names. But anyway, I didn't have any issue with their relationship. It had its ups and downs like any other relationship. No major issue there. So I thought Caleb was a pretty good character. I just I didn't like the whole switch from bad boy to instant yes, I'm gonna listen that quickly. See, Genesis Life. So she was, to me, the most bland of the cadets. Not that she was bad acted or anything like that. I just don't think they really developed her. They just made her as, okay, I'm the girl who wants to be the starship captain. I'm going to do that no matter what. And so, but beyond that, I don't feel like they gave her a whole lot of other development in her character, except for making friends with like Sam and, you know, interacting with her friends in that way. They finally gave her a chance, though, to be in the captain's chair and live her dream that she's waited for so frickin' long, and they blew it with comedy. They blew it her moment where she said, I have to pee. Like, I think they should have left that out. I think that they really could have made Genesis look strong and heroic and sure of herself in that moment by being in that chair and saying, this is my moment, I'm going to make this happen. If I were her, maybe she did, I don't know, but if I were her, the actress, I would have said, I'm not saying this. This is my big moment of seriousness. I'm going to make it happen. I am going to own it. But I think obviously they would have developed the character as more time would have gone on, but I think she was the most bland of the characters. Let's see who's the next one. Darren Ramey. Okay. So he was all over the frickin' map in this show. So in the first episode, he was a real jerk who had no problem picking on Jayden or being the bully, basically, of the Academy. He did let it go, though, and he tried to actually be like a normal Starfleet cadet that wanted to be a Starfleet officer, and he risked his life to go on the hall and reprogram the programmable matter that was being used by the Venari Raw to stop the ship. So he was able to do that. Then you'd have episodes where he was apparently a straight guy, but then he was bisexual because he talked about having an orgy in water with males and females. But then you'd see him in episodes where he was flirting only with female cadets. Then in episode 4 with the Klingons, all of a sudden out of nowhere, he just shows a random attraction and interest in Jayden, which then got played up again in episode 7 when he was supposed to marry that princess or whatever, because he was actually royalty. And we find out he definitely does want to stay in Starfleet. He was willing to let Starfleet go, but to do the marriage and do his duty, but he really wanted to be in Starfleet, which is why his fiance let him go. I actually thought that was a pretty good moment. But it just his character just seems to jump around from, you know, party boy to jerk to serious to helpful. I'm straight, I'm bi, I'm gay. What are you? It just didn't seem like there was a whole lot of development with him. He just didn't make sense. He was all over the map. The one cadet that was my absolute favorite was Sam. I really thought, when I first learned about Sam's character, I thought it was an interesting arc. Now, obviously, we've had holographic characters before with the Doctor in Voyager, and now back in Academy. But what I really thought was interesting about her was that she was only 4 months old. And she was really new to life. And she could have been like your Spock, Data, Odo, Doctor character who was learning about humanity and what that was meant to be. And that she was supposed to be. She was literally the Castian emissary to humanity. And that's why I was able to kind of be like, okay, when she tried to get herself drunk and she was in that bar, it made sense. She was learning new things. She kind of reminded me of the characters from Third Rock from the Sun. She was trying to learn what it meant to be an organic, but also human or humanoid. Okay, and I think that they did a good job with that, but I think what they shouldn't have done, it was in the episode, I believe it was episode 8, where she was glitching, and they decided they were going to take her to her home planet, and Cask has that time dilation, kind of like in that one episode of Voyager. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was from season 6, where the Voyager went to a planet, and it aged centuries for every few minutes or days on Voyager. So they had the Doctor go back to that planet with her, and they were able to give her a childhood that they felt would help complete her. And by extension, it actually helped finish the Doctor's story of the grief he felt when he had to experience the death of his holographic daughter in the third season episode of Voyager. And I didn't really like that arc. I thought it was beautifully done, don't get me wrong, but that was what was interesting about Sam. If she had no past, she was 4 months old, and she was learning what it was to be an organic from a young age where she would be starting to learn life. That made her fascinating. Instead, they gave her this backstory and added this subplot to her character that really I don't think was necessary. It just gave her a father figure. That's all. I think that they should have left her the way she was. A new life form, 4 months old, 4 months plus, and learning the world. I think that's the way it should have gone. Let's see, who else do we have here? Well, let's talk about Jay Den. Okay, he was a pretty controversial character on the show, and quite frankly, I actually liked Jay Den. We've seen other Klingon characters on the show that were doctors, or they were from the Kethel Lowlands. In Lower Decks, we saw Klingon farmers, which I thought was really cool. So the fact that we had a Klingon coming into the sciences to be a healer, a medic, that made perfect sense to me, that he wasn't really going to be a warrior. I think the problem with Jay Den's character is they took all the warrior out of him. They took all the Klingon out of him. You know, I mean, they did talk about, he said his typical things about duty, honor, loyalty. They gave him some of the typical Klingon lines, but they never had him acting, per se, like a Klingon. I did love where they did the Rustai ritual from the 3rd season episode of Next Generation, the bonding, where he was trying to bond with all of his cadet friends. That was very touching, and I thought it was pretty well written for the show. So we saw that he did embrace some Klingon culture, but we found out in the 32nd century that Kronos has been destroyed by the burn, and now the Klingons are essentially refugees, which doesn't make any sense, because even if Kronos was destroyed, how long did the Klingon Empire last? 1,000 years? A little longer? I mean, they're still being called the Klingon Empire, so I mean, there's still a Klingon Empire. Why didn't they just relocate to one of their colony worlds? Or conquer another planet in the Klingon Empire? That was bad writing, and I think it was meant to be used as an allegory about immigration and all that kind of stuff, but to me, it didn't work in the episode. Okay, and we find out that Jay Den was a member of, I guess, a polyamorous family, so he had 2 dads and a mom. I don't know what they wrote that for. We've never seen a polyamorous Klingon family before. And if they're trying to reach out to younger people out in the world, or even to older Star Trek fans, let's say, how many families out there have 3 parents or more? I mean, that makes no sense. How are you trying to connect with in that regard? Made no sense and didn't fit Klingon canon, at least to my knowledge, in any way, shape, or form. But then we also had the Jay Den. He wanted to join Starfleet. He didn't want to keep being nomadic with his parents and stuff like that. And so, I mean, his father actually missed the shot with the arrow of killing the bird. It's kind of like a symbolic meaning for Jay Den to be let go and do what he wanted to do. But if the Klingon Empire was in jeopardy and he had the ability to stay with his people and to help continue on the race, breed, as they needed to do, why didn't he? He only focused on Jay Den instead of the group itself. And could that have caused some sort of, chaos for him, in his mind as the episodes were going on? Yes, absolutely. But it just didn't seem appropriate that his character would be like, you know what, I don't care about my people, I don't care about my family, I'm going to go take care of my needs. It just seemed very selfish. That was the thing about the character I didn't like. Other than that, I thought he was a pretty okay character. I didn't mind that Jay Den was a gay Klingon. That was no big deal. I don't see why they needed to put him in a skirt. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think they needed to have a man in a skirt, to try to attract a younger audience. Not every gay human being goes and takes on effeminate traits. I felt that was more stereotypical than actually trying to bring in more of gay characters and showing them outside of their stereotypes. I just thought it was stupid. Then we had, who is it? Terima Sadal, I believe her was. So she was the Beta Z character, or cadet. She started out in the War College. Then she ended up transferring over to Starfleet Academy, which originally she wasn't happy about, but she did. Personally, I felt her character was kind of boring. I liked her in the episode that she premiered in, where we saw her as like the ambassador's daughter, and she was being toured around by Caleb Meir. We got to see the humpback whales again in the 32nd century. I liked that, but then they had that inhibitor on her, which was inhibiting her from these violent emotions and thoughts that could actually kill people. I don't think that was really necessary for that character. I think what would have been more interesting is if she was like the Tam Elbrin character from the 3rd season Next Generation episode Tin Man, where his telepathic abilities were switched on at an early age, where it was supposed to come on in adolescence, and he couldn't deal with it. I think bringing that back in would have been a nice Easter egg, and it would have been interesting to see how that would have affected her character and her interactions with Caleb and the rest of the Academy cadets. I think that would have been much more interesting. Also, along with her being Betazoid, the writers really screwed up the Betazoids. I don't know if they did their full research, but they didn't see that the Betazoids on this show didn't seem to be telepathic. They were empathic. And remember, Counselor Troy was empathic, but she was only half Betazoid. That's why she wasn't full telepath, just like her mother was. So they just thought, oh, it's a race of empaths. So they ran with that. Also, here's one thing that I did like. That current Star Trek has really tried hard to be extremely, very inclusive of people in the real world. Not just racially, but through gender and through sexual orientation, and handicaps or disabilities. And you can see in the show they had a handicapped character or characters. You saw people when the Academy cadets were together. You could see shots where there were cadets in wheelchairs. They also tried to bring in the telepathy, the sign language for her father. But the problem is they used American Sign Language. This was a full Betazoid contingent. And remember, Beta Z had been, because of the burn, they went behind this psionic wall and isolated themselves from the rest of the Federation and the rest of the galaxy. They withdrew from the Federation. Okay? They're coming now, and you're telling me they're using American Sign Language? That's stupid. Now, I think they did it so that way people who are deaf and read American Sign Language can be like, oh, I see what they're saying with their hands. That's really cool. That represents who I am. Didn't make sense in the context of aliens using it. It made no frickin' sense at all. It would have been made more sense if they made an American or a human character with the being shown sign language or using sign language. That would have made much more sense. Or they could have created some sort of interesting Betazoid version of sign language. That would have made more sense. Not American Sign Language. Come on. You got to be better writers than that, for goodness sakes. Okay? But I would say Terima, she just fell flat for me. I mean, Genesis, I actually may have had a little bit more background than Terima. I just found her boring. Now let's talk about some of the adult characters. So we have Nala Ake, our Chancellor, our captain, who threw her whole career away because she took a child away from a criminal, which she thought was horrible to do, which again made no sense. But I felt that the character was refreshing in her own way. The fact that she was 400 years old, she was half Lanthanite, so she was several hundred years old. She knew about life before the burn, and she lost a child to the burn. So we know that she's been long-lasting, and she had been in Starfleet for a long time. You can see throughout the show she does have, she can be strong. She's assured of herself, but I think the reason why they made her lackadaisical was because she was around for 400 years. And we've heard older people in life say, you know what, I'm in my 70s, I don't give a crap what I say anymore. That's basically, I think, where she was at, and I think that's what they were aiming for. But with her laying around in her chair and laying on people's couches and, you know, not asking to do so with her feet, you know, dirty feet up, and she didn't come off or present herself as very in command through a lot of the earlier episodes. She just seemed silly and goofy. Even in the episode with the rivalry with the Academy and the War College, they had her goofing off with them, and she was giving them hints of how to get back at them, and that weirdo Harry Potter kind of plant that was talking and making, you know, goofy sounds or whatever, and it bred everywhere. You know, I mean, that's what a chancellor shouldn't be doing, in my opinion. I mean, again, they were trying to do the younger crowd, but I just thought it was like, oh, I want to be cool like the kids that are here 30 years, you know, in her case, hundreds of years her junior. You know, it just didn't fit well with me. Now I did like when the crew went and they were on the Mirazaki, or in the last 2 episodes of the season, which I thought were actually pretty strong and pretty interesting. She sat in that chair. She was full composure. She was all Captain Janeway in that chair. So when it counted, she was able to get serious. But just some of that lackadaisical stuff, it just came off as a little bit much at times. But I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of her. And I thought Holly Hunter did a good job playing the character. I did wonder during the show, like, she had some sort of like speech impediment or something, and I've never seen anything with Holly Hunter, so I'm not making fun of her. I just had a hard time understanding some of what she was saying, and then I was also wondering, is it because, you know, does she have some sort of like hearing or speech thing in real life, or was this just the way they wrote her character? I didn't know. But again, I didn't really understand the whole backstory of her with Caleb Meir. I thought it was a waste of a storyline that only came up sporadically throughout the season. And it doesn't make sense that, I mean, I could see where she would feel bad about seeing a child separated from his mom, but the mom was a criminal. She wasn't some victim, you know, just because she got sucked in by Newsbraka and his group. She made the choice to go there so she could get food. And no matter whether she killed the guy or not, she helped to cause the death of a Starfleet officer. She wasn't innocent. And I don't understand why Ake gave up her whole career for that one incident, when I really believe she probably did that a whole bunch of other times as well. Made no sense, in my opinion. Okay. Laura Thok. We have her. She's our half Klingon, half Jem'Hadar female. I'm going to call her the drill instructor, because that's really what she was. And I didn't hate the character, even though the character doesn't necessarily make sense, because again, we know that the Jem'Hadar were only male, and they were bred in pods, genetically engineered. They had no women. Now, I tried to be honest and fair with it and say, okay, we're 800 years past Deep Space Nine, whatever it was. Okay, and maybe, you know, there were changes in Dominion society, and maybe the founders created Jem'Hadar women. Who knows? And they were allowed to be free and breed. Who knows what Odo brought to the Great Link after he got there? You know, anything's possible. But anyway, technically the character should not have existed the way she did. I thought she was a good drill sergeant. I definitely had no issue there. I wasn't expecting that she was going to be in a relationship with Jet Reno, but hey, they were, I guess, 2 peas in a pod. I thought she had a good line in one of the episodes where she was talking to Jay Den about him being Klingon, and her helping him to understand kind of what her dad was trying to do to let him be free rather than just leaving him behind, because he dishonored the family. So there was some empathy there, and there was humor with the character, but I don't think there was a whole lot more. And then she was gone for 3 episodes, so we didn't get. That was a chance to we could have learned more and seen her doing more. I liked that she was a very loyal first officer to Chancellor Ake. And a well-trained bridge crew member. So I thought she was interesting. Having the Doctor back was actually a lot of fun. He felt like Robert Picardo kind of just slipped back into the role. It was very comfortable for him. And you can see that he's definitely gained a lot of knowledge, and he's gained a lot of... he's very much even more sure of himself than he ever was. He's still the same character. We still see him singing opera with people, enjoying those kind of things. But we still see that there's a lot of hurt from the past. There's a lot of hurt that he has survived as long as he has, and he's gone through friendship after friendship after friendship. And he's also still holding on to that loss of his daughter. from all those years ago, which I think it was a nice way to bridge back to that story. But they never mentioned that episode again in Voyager after that, and I thought it was kind of weird that he would still be on that when all he had to do was put the program back to its normal parameters and have the characters of his family being all lovey-dovey with him again. So that the fact that he never did that or even created another family to try again didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But it was really nice to see the Doctor back. Even though I do still believe that he was trying to phone in that fake laugh when that pufferfish went, "Fear!" You know, it was almost like he was looking down, and it was almost like you could tell he thought it was stupid and beneath him. But he did it for a paycheck, right? So it was good to see the Doctor again, to have that continuity. You know, and that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. Having Jet Reno back, I wasn't a big fan of Discovery. But she was actually one character I actually liked, even though she was sarcastic and quirky, and they're right. Tig Notaro is playing Tig Notaro in this show. It seems like her in real life to begin with. But I thought her character in Discovery and then leading into Academy was a little refreshing. Just kind of how she was very sarcastic and shooting from the lip and things like that. And she was it never seemed like she was out of her way to try to hurt anybody. She just kind of looked at life with humor and fun, and I think that brought some wisdom to her, which you can see she was trying to pass on to the characters in Academy, into the cadets. So I didn't really have any issue with her. I just never liked Discovery itself. All right. So basically, those are my thoughts about the show. I know I kind of went everywhere with everything, but the kind of how the show worked with me and my brain is it just kind of took me all over the place. You know, I am interested in seeing what season 2 will bring, even though the show has been canceled. But the question is now, where do we go from here with Star Trek? And I know there are a lot of rumors online, because with Mike Sussman, who was an executive producer on Enterprise, who has really worked with the 4th season and really made a great season that connected Enterprise with the original series very, very well. He's working with Scott Bakula right now on that Star Trek United project, which would take place 30 years after Enterprise, with President Archer and dealing with the foundations of the Federation, leading the Federation, a lot of political stuff going on, while also trying to deal with his wife and his 4 kids, who are all spread out doing their own things, which are impacting his functioning as well. So it sounds like the way it was described is it would be kind of like the level of quality of writing of Andor, and it would bring Star Trek back to following continuity and, you know, good, strong, serious writing that it needs to have again. I don't want any more prequels personally. I mean, the fact that they call Discovery and Strange New Worlds prequels is laughable to me, when it doesn't even fit anywhere with the original series, unless little things they chose they wanted it to follow. They basically spit all over the original series, in my opinion, including changing the timeline and the canon. So fuck those shows, you know. But I really think that Star Trek United could actually be a good prequel. It doesn't have to be full of Easter eggs or whatever. It can just function on its own, tie back to Enterprise to some degree, but being its own thing. I think that would be good. But you know what I really think Star Trek needs to do? I think it needs to go back to its roots. And I've said this in a previous video. Star Trek needs to go back to where it's on the Enterprise and they're out exploring space. And I think you probably do it with another ship with another name, but why not go back to the formula that works? That worked with the original series and the Next Generation, which were by far the most popular Star Trek shows ever. Okay? You could say, well didn't Enterprise and didn't Strange New Worlds do that? They did, but they were prequels. So they had to bring in established canon, or in Strange New Worlds world, change whatever they didn't like, because why follow a 55-year-old show? You know, which was bullshit to me. But anyway, I think if they get on the Enterprise with an all-new crew, nobody tied to Spock or Kirk or Picard or Cisco or any of them, all brand new characters on an Enterprise, going out and exploring and going where no one has gone before. I think that's what they need to get back to, is the core of it. And then the Star Trek will grow again. And stop making goofy characters and trying to pander to a small group of people, 1824, who probably aren't interested in sci-fi or Star Trek anyway, outside of its DEI at this point. Continue to focus on the ideals of the show, but move it forward with quality writing. That's all that matters. That's all you need to do, and I guarantee you'll have a hit. And tie it and make it that older fans want to watch it. They're the people that have been around for 60 years or less. You know, don't keep going after this new 18 to 24. It's not going to work. It might if you actually have good stories and show that 18 to 24-year-olds are intelligent and not stupid. Okay? And there's your formula for success. So that's my thought on Strange New Worlds and the current status of Star Trek and where it should go. I'd like to have your thoughts. Please leave comments down below. I will get back to you with your comments. If you're interested in watching past shows of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat, seeing what the show is all about, go to youtube.com, type in Pittsburgh's Trek Chat in the search engine, and it'll take you directly to my channel. You can follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. You can also follow the show on X at PGH Trek Chat. Looking forward to the next episode, and until then, may yins live long and prosper.